Hi everyone, welcome. It's the Nikki Clarke Show on Instagram Live, and I'm your host, Nikki Clarke. The show is about transforming lives, one story at a time, and with all the many changes that we've been experiencing because of the pandemic, we've had to make some kind of adjustments, but we have Instagram Live as a great platform to share those stories. And very excited to have an interview today live with Brian Crombie. He's going to be joining us very shortly. He is the chair of the Transit Alliance, and he also has a show on Saga 960 AM. And we're going to talk about how the show evolved and all the other wonderful things he's doing in the community. There he is. Right after the federal election, I was on Brian's show, and he so kindly kind of gave me an opportunity to debrief and talk about the experience. And then there'll be an episode, hopefully after a few weeks. There's an episode on his TV show. We were there a few weeks ago talking about some of the other initiatives that I'm involved in. So there you go. I'm so glad Brian is joining.
I'm so sorry I'm delayed. Nice to join you.
Oh, good. Welcome.
I was on a call. I couldn't get on.
I knew that. So I told everyone that you were on a call.
But it's sitting in a computer in an office that they haven't visited for the last 2 months, so they haven't edited it. So we'll have to either redo it or we'll finally get it edited and broadcast. But I appreciate it.
Totally understandable. You know what?
And as I said, I thought you did a spectacular job running both federally and provincially. And I think, there's a great future for you in politics. And hopefully one of these days you will win, whether it's provincial, federal, or municipal or whatnot.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that's an honor coming from you. So everyone, as I was leading up to it, we were chit-chatting before you got here. I was telling everyone about all the wonderful accomplishments you have. And I knew that you were on a phone call because before we joined, I know that you were finishing up a call from Lebanon. So yeah, I know you're very busy. So thank you for this time. And I just wanted everyone to know a little bit about your journey. Brian, you're so accomplished, but maybe people don't know the story behind the story. So I just wanted to give you a chance to maybe talk about, your journey leading up to what you're doing today. Radio host, you do so many things in the community, and you're also the chair of the Transit Alliance. How did it all happen? What fueled that passion to do all this?
Well, I've been involved in politics myself for a long period of time. I started out in politics working for a second cousin of mine in 1972, a wonderful gentleman by the name of Bob Nixon, who is the former leader of the Liberal Party, former treasurer of Ontario, probably one of the most intelligent, impressive gentlemen I've ever had the privilege of meeting. He, I guess 2 summers ago, turned 90 years old, and I was privileged to go to his birthday party. And his father, my great uncle, was Premier of Ontario in 1943-44, before David Peterson, the last Liberal Premier of Ontario. Anyway, he ran for the leadership of the Liberal Party in 1972, and I was a young buck, and I went to the Royal York Hotel and participated in his leadership campaign, which was a great deal of fun, and that got me hooked in politics. 1976, I ran for position on the Ontario Young Liberal Executive Board with a gentleman that I think you know called Howard Brown, who was the president of the Ontario Young Liberals at the time. And I sort of got involved in politics ever since. 1981-82, I worked for David Peterson. In 81, he was running as a MPP in London. And then in 1982, he ran for leadership of the Ontario Liberal Party, and I was his youth chairman during that time period, and met my then wife at the time during that campaign, and both of us were obviously in politics. And I make this joke to my kids, which they make a lot of fun about, that I have a passion for infrastructure, and I truly do have a passion for infrastructure, and that may sound really strange and silly, but I am convinced that that infrastructure is that public good that sort of provides the oil to our social system. You know, it's the highways, it's the subways, it's the water pipes, etc. that really have to come from government. You know, I think in some cases you can have private companies supply that, but even if the private companies supply it, they've got to have some sort of a regulatory situation that that allows it to happen on a monopoly-like basis. Otherwise, you know, why would we pay? If the water's coming down the street, we're not going to pay for it unless we actually get taxed for it.
Right.
So, and I think really good infrastructure means that cities work even better. And, you know, highways and transit being the best examples, but lots of other things are examples. And, you know, I think in the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, parks have become even more obvious about how important they are as we've been restricted in our use of parks.
Sure.
And I think that it's been a travesty that we haven't been able to get out and enjoy fresh air, because if you think about COVID-19 and creating immunity, getting out into our parks is one of the things that we should be doing so that we get vitamin D and fresh air and sunshine and exercise and all those kinds of things. Anyway, all those things are the infrastructure that government supply, and so I've got a passion about that. I got very involved in a bunch of transit issues during a couple of municipal elections in Mississauga over the years.
Yes.
And then got offered an opportunity to join the board of Transit Alliance, and then ultimately to become the chair of Transit Alliance. Transit Alliance is a civic advocacy organization for the whole Greater Toronto Area. It's got over 100 members that are companies and individuals that are involved in the transit business and are passionate about transit. We had a session last week virtually with the CEO of Metrolinx, Phil Verster. We had about 133 people sign up to join it, and we had almost 100 that actually ended up joining it. So there's a great deal of interest in transit. And all the time, but frankly, even more so now, as people are wondering what's going to happen with transit in this sort of COVID-19 social distancing, physical distancing era. And so it was, you know, really quite interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a really good, you know, point that you brought up. I wanted to get a sense from you about where things are at in terms of commuters, and if there are any mandates or any systems in place to protect both the transit officers, the ones who are providing the transit services, and also those who are commuting. What's happening? I'm hearing from the TTC that they will mandate the face covering, but I'm not sure what it is. Is it just a rumor, or is it something that's going to be put in place? Have you heard of anything like that?
I don't know, and I'm not sure if Metrolinx has decided or the TTC decided for sure. I do know, and they've talked about how they're instituting a lot more cleaning than they may have had in the past, and that the cleaning that they've been doing has been far more intensive than the cleaning that you know, New York, for an example, and other places have been bragging about them doing. I think that you know, one of the challenges is going to be that. I'll give you an example. I take the GO train, or at least I was taking the GO train during rush hour from Clarkson in the west side of Toronto. And if you took the express, you weren't face to face. You were like nose to nose with other people on the express.
I've been there. Yes.
If you took a local, you might be a little bit better off, but still, you know, packed. I don't think we can do that in a era of physical distancing, obviously. And so I think that we're going to have to do something. It's interesting. So I was talking, as you mentioned, with someone from Beirut, Lebanon, and what they've done is they're effectively allowing people out only half time. So depending on whether your license plate ends in an odd or an even number, you're not allowed to use your car and or go out and about on an odd or an even. You're only allowed to go out the days that are equivalent, odd or even, with your license plate, odd or even. And so what they're doing is they're trying to cut down traffic, both in, you know, highways as well as commuter and stores and other things by half, by 50%. So, you know, you think about, and the reason why they can do that, they think, is that a lot of us have got used to using Zoom and other things and working at home. And so rather than go back to work full time, or go back to work in your old office downtown full time, go back half time. And frankly, I think that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
It's not an on and off switch if we can go on halfway. And if you think about all those packed subway trains and packed GO trains, or buses, if they were half as full, we still might not be perfectly 6 feet apart, but it would still be a lot better than we've got today. The other thing that I think needs to be thought about, and I know they're thinking about it somehow, is it's different times. Because if you go onto the GO train, if I go on my GO train before 6:30 or after 9:30,
right,
they're not vacant, but they're close to vacant. In London, England, I think it's called the Orchid or Orchard, or I can't remember what, Oyster Pass that they've got, which is the equivalent of our Presto Pass, is such that you get on for a significant discount, something like 50%, if you travel earlier in the morning or later in the morning than the rush hour. Because the problem is, what we've done is we've built our capacity to take and only just take the peak. Well, if we can spread the peak out, just as we've learned from everything associated with social distancing, physical distancing, as we've taken the peak infection down, if we can take the peak ridership down from 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning and spread it out a little bit more and flatten that curve, then it's going to be easier on the transit system, more cost effective on the transit system, and it's going to be such that there won't be as much crowding and we will be more physically distant. So I think that that's something that needs to happen. Now, I have heard that in China, as China has reopened, that there are a lot of people that are not using transit. I think transit ridership is down something like 40%, but they're using cars. And car purchases are up dramatically. I think that's a shame. If we go back to a world where everyone is commuting by car, all we're going to do is have, clogged highways, clogged parking lots, clogged with pollution skies, and clogged arteries with, whatever else. And so transit is the solution. We just have to figure out a way of doing it in a physically distant, public health-wise manner, not go back to a complete car lifestyle. I think that Jennifer Keesmaat, who I had on my radio show, I think a week ago, was talking about how this move toward living and working in a more less distant manner and getting rid of the long commute is something that should happen. And she's probably right. If we can find a job close to where we are, one of the things that makes great cities great is that a family can live in a city, and even if the different members of the family have different jobs in different locations, they can all live together in a city. So I don't want to be in a situation where you almost have to, go back to small town Ontario, where everyone has to live and work in a couple miles of one another. But to the extent that that's possible, that is clearly beneficial. And you've probably read a lot of the same articles that I've read about how walking and bicycling are great for us, great for our health, great for the environment.
Yes.
And to the extent that you are within walking distance or biking distance of your job, clearly that's better. So I do think that people are going to think about that. And I think people during COVID-19 have remembered the pleasure of walking around their neighborhood, because we got out walking around our neighborhoods. So you know what, if you can, walk to the subway or walk to the GO train or walk to your job or bike, I think that's clearly beneficial.
Absolutely. And you brought up another really good point of just people have discovered alternatives to working. You don't have to go to that 9 to 5. You can create your 9 to whatever time at home. There's so many remote work opportunities available that people didn't even discover. But the pandemic has actually created us to be creative, to find ways to get some income. So definitely a new normal when we come on the outside.
I think that there's going to be a little bit less use of downtown office space. I think companies are going to have to rethink about that. I think that people have gotten used to electronic virtual means of communicating. You and I know each other. We've met personally several times. I think it's far easier to have an ongoing communication, connection, relationship with with someone after you've met them personally. So I don't think it's a complete replacement for personal connection and personal meeting, but it certainly can amplify that personal connection, and far better than by the telephone, because when you can see someone and you can see their their physical, their visual, their posture, how they respond, what they smile about, what they laugh about, that's far better than just hearing it on the telephone, or even worse, by email or text. So I do think that use of Zoom and FaceTime and Microsoft Works and all these other things,
Instagram Live,
have all helped that, and I think we're going to end up doing a lot more of it. That said, there's still going to be a real need to meet, to go downtown, or to wherever it is that offices are, and so I don't think we're not all going to work from home all the time, but I think that there's a better chance. And frankly, I've worked from home now for almost 2 months, maybe more than 2 months, and I'm reasonably productive. I used to travel to different cities every week, and I probably will go back to that in the future, but probably less than I did in the past.
Yeah, I agree. Same here. I've been, hustling from, where I am to downtown, and now I've, like yourself, set up a home office. And yes, it's a relief to just, walk a few feet to your office instead of several miles. But yes, I think it gives a really good option, and it'll provide some kind of balance when that time comes. We can probably just do a little here and a little there, back in the hustle and bustle of a regular workday, and see what happens. But yeah, definitely a new normal is coming. So let's talk a little bit about your radio show. And again, I want to thank you for allowing me to be on to talk about some of my experiences. But what is the premise of the radio show, Brian, and when did you start it?
I started last September, and the premise is just giving me an opportunity to interview some people that I find fascinating. I think initially the radio station was hoping that I would focus a lot on politics, and I do a fair amount of political or economic or business interviews. I tend to do those earlier in the week, and then I get people from a lifestyle or other things, arts, later on the weekend. And a lot of that's because I have got personally several interests. As you may remember, I was president of the Mississauga Arts Council, and I have been involved in the business of sports and entertainment for a long period of time. My very first job when I graduated from business school back a few decades ago was working for the Walt Disney Company, and so sports and entertainment have been a passion of mine for a long period of time, and so what I typically do is this week is an interesting example. So last night I had a show with a fascinating gentleman on leadership, Martin Cabot, who is the former CEO of Cancer Canada, and has studied leadership both practically in business and not for profits for a long period of time, and then actually did a academic review of it. Did a review of leadership from ancient Greece and Rome, and Genghis Khan time to today, and the traits of great leaders, and compared it to Donald Trump. And so it's a fascinating review. Tonight I've got Sarita Samaru, a lawyer, talking about legal issues legal issues for real estate in the time of COVID-19. Tomorrow I've got Diane Francis, columnist with the National Post, and Hussein Ahmed, a money manager from Yorkville Asset Management, talking about the economy and whether we should reopen and how we should reopen it. So, in 3 days, business, law, and the economy. And then on Thursday, I'm going to have a show with Dr. Manal Naboussi from Beirut, Lebanon, who is a life coach, talking about relationships and the 5 stages of relationships and the 5 live languages and a whole bunch of other things, which is absolutely fascinating. And then on Friday, I've got an interview with a lady that owns a chain of beauty schools and health and wellness schools in Western Canada, Western United States, and what they're doing in this time of COVID-19 to survive, and how she thinks that health and wellness is the secret to success in life, and then also why she started it when she went through an unbelievably traumatic experience in her life and almost died. And so, what do you call those two? Those are like lifestyle shows for Thursday and Friday. And so that's sort of my typical week. Last week I had Jennifer Keys-Matt talking about the change of urban Toronto in all urban centers in the time of COVID-19. I had a fascinating doctor who has a clinical trial proposal in front of the Ethics Board in Health Canada to try to do a trial of COVID, a trial of infecting COVID-19 volunteers who will get infected in a healthy setting, such that they create the antibodies, such that they can go back to work in healthcare and other high visibility, high exposure scenarios, hospitals, seniors' homes, etc. Because he's convinced it's going to be too long until we get a vaccine, and he thinks that we need to have some herd immunity built up in our society. Wednesday, I had Josh Cole, former chair of the TTC, talking about transit issues. Can't remember who I had Thursday now. I'll have to think about it for a second. And then Friday, I had two artists, Anna George, an actress from New York, and Count Classy, a LGBT hip-hop artist who's really breaking down barriers against homophobia in the hip-hop business. So, I loved it. Really interesting, lots of different people to talk to and interview, and I get to do that from the comfort of my home office and share it with lots of other people.
Awesome. Well, I can hear the passion in your voice. So, how has your life been transformed by pursuing this passion project of yours, the Brian Crombie Show?
Well, it's a challenge in that it's clearly just an extra gig that I do outside of work hours because I still work full-time doing financial advisory work as part of my company, Crombie Capital Partners, that provides financial advisory services to companies. And so that's a challenge from a timing standpoint. But given that I've saved some time commuting and I can do it from my house, and that I want to socially interact with people, even if I can't do it in real life face-to-face, but I get to do it through virtual life face-to-face. It's wonderful. And I've told you 2 weeks of interesting people. What I try to do is I try to do a sort of a summary every week of the people that I have interviewed. And I've had a lot of people that don't catch it when it's live on the radio, don't catch it when it's live streamed, but catch either the show show top of her class in 1950 something or other from University of Toronto in art and archaeology. And she became in addition to a mom and a housewife, a docent at the Art Gallery of Ontario and a tour guide from the National Gallery of Art in Ottawa, where she actually took art out of the art gallery to schools and to school kids, primary school kids, to educate them on how to appreciate art. So very knowledgeable in art. So we first did a show on art appreciation. Then we did a show on art about Easter. And then just last Sunday, we did a show on art about mothers through the ages for Mother's Day.
Nice.
And I've had over 5,000 views of one of her shows. And so
she's lovely. This is Flora, right?
Yeah. And what a great opportunity for me to interview my mom and record for posterity some of her intelligence. And we actually go through and we record in a PowerPoint presentation the art she wants to talk about, and we share the screen. And it's wonderful.
Oh, beautiful. That is definitely a wonderful moment to share with your mother, and I was so pleased to meet her. She's such a warm person, and as you said, extremely intelligent. So much to offer, and I'm glad that you have it, there for posterity.
Thanks.
Saved on film.
And I remember who I did on Thursday. I can't believe I forgot. So I interviewed on Thursday Aaron O'Toole, who is the MP for Durham, and he's running for leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. And so, I've been able to have the privilege of interviewing Andrew Scheer, the current leader of the Conservative Party, three of the candidates for the leadership of the Liberal Party before they had their convention near the end of February. Elizabeth May, the leader of the Green Party, 3 New Democrat MPPs, the deputy leader of the Green Party of Ontario, the Minister of Infrastructure, Catherine McKenna, next week I've got the Minister of Transportation in Ontario, Caroline Mulroney. So, some interesting people, and then some former politicians, John Nunziata and Dennis Mills and people like that. So, it's been great.
Oh, wow. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. And Brian, I just wanted to ask you this before we conclude. People are going through a range of emotions right now because of the pandemic. What message of hope would you offer the viewers?
I think every generation gets tested in a different way. And I really thought that the test for our generation was going to be climate change. And it still may be the test for our generation. But we're being tested now. And I think that the test is not over, which may be the opposite of your desire for hope. But I think we're going to be tested for the next year. I think there's a high likelihood of a second wave in the fall/winter, and even a third wave in the winter/spring. And that's what happened in 1918, 1919 during the Spanish flu. That said, I do think that we've done a great job via physical distancing. I think that the social distancing was overdone. And I think that might lead to some negative reactions. And for example, I already made my argument about parks. I think we should be encouraged to be socially close to people, but in a physically distant manner. Right. And the argument that I've done on closures of parks or restrictions in parks has been, we trust people not to cross white lines on highways when we're going 120 kilometers an hour. Why can't we trust people to walk 6 feet apart in a park, or sit 6 feet apart on a beach, or whatever it is that they're going to be doing. So I worry that some of the things may have gone too far, and that therefore people might react negatively to it. That said, we've done a good job. We've flattened the curve. Our per capita infection rate and death rate in Canada is like half of what it is in the United States. And so I think that collectively we've done a good job in Canada. I think whether it's this clinical trial that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that is potentially being done at Mount Sinai, or whether it's just natural infections where you find different people have got the antibodies because they were infected, didn't realize it, were mildly sick and recovered, and or because more of us get it and we're mildly infected and we recover and we've got the antibodies, and or because of a vaccine, we're gonna get over this, and we're gonna learn to live with it, and it'll probably be sort of more like the flu in the future. And so will people still get it? Will people still get sick? Will some people still die? Yes, but it'll be more, I believe, in the future like the sort of the annual flu than a pandemic. And what we would have learned, and lots of people have talked about this, but I think it's really true. It's almost as if Mother Nature told us all to go to our rooms and take a time out. You've seen that there's clean water in the canals of Venice, that the skies above Los Angeles and above Shanghai and Beijing are clean again, that people have spent more times in their homes with their families, with their loved ones. Some relationships may be strained, but I think a lot of relationships are richer today. I think we've recognized the importance of our neighborhoods. We've recognized the importance of reaching out and touching people, particularly older people, where, we got to call and FaceTime and connect with our moms and our dads and our grandparents, even if we can't do it in real life physically, but we do it in virtual life. So I think this has actually been a great lesson learned. I've learned to cook a lot more, not as often. I'm less busy from an event standpoint and enjoy that, though I still try to do it online. I think that we've all recognized how health is so critically important to our life.
Health as well.
Whether it's exercise or diet or whatnot, you've got to get your immunity system up. You've got to. Otherwise, you're going to be susceptible. And, it's interesting that, people that have got diabetes and or respiratory issues are obviously a lot more susceptible to this infection.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
the hope is, I think this is a test. So far,
Yeah.
we've done well in the test.
We
I think the
passed.
test, we've passed. I think the test is not over, and we still got to keep working on it.
Yeah.
But we're going to learn great things from this, and we will get through it, and I think we'll be better for it.
Fantastic. Thank you for your pearls of wisdom. And before we go, can you just tell us again, where can we go and meet you on social media? And tell us when we can tune in to listen and watch your show.
So my show, the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, is on every night at 6 p.m. on Saga 960 AM. So that's 960 AM on the AM dial. You can also stream it online at www.saga960am.ca. And all of my podcasts and videocasts, because I record most as both a podcast and a videocast, are available on my website, which is briancrombie.com. And you just go to the podcast page or the videocast page. And my Facebook is Brian Crombie, and my Instagram is Brian Crombie, and my LinkedIn is Brian Crombie. And you can go to any one of those three, and my Twitter. I post advertisements about my upcoming shows and video links of my past shows on most of that social media, so you can test it out. And then once a week, what I usually do is I post a link to all my shows. So if you don't want to listen to all of them, you can pick and choose which ones you might want to listen to. And honestly, I think I do an okay job. I get some interesting people, and I'm sitting here at my dining room table right now. I don't know if you can see, but this is my dining room table where
nice fireplace.
Lots of great dinner parties, and it's sort of like coming to one of my dinner parties and seeing me ask a bunch of questions of one of my dinner guests.
I love it. Thank you so much for allowing me in your dining room and to be part of your guest situation today. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for everything you shared about the Transit Alliance, and as the systems grow in terms of protecting riders and the ones offering the services, and also your show. Great. Congratulations for everything you've done. Great success. Looking forward to your upcoming episodes. And I guess you got to go in pretty soon, right? 6 o'clock to go in live right now. So I'm not going to hold you back. We've been watching the Nikki Clarke Show, transforming lives one story at a time. And so happy to have very special guest, Brian Crombie. Brian,
so
thanks again.
Nikki, before you go,
yes.
When are you going to run again?
Provincially.
Do I get to knock on doors for you?
Oh, please.
I look forward to it.
Thank you. I thank you in advance. I'm going to need all the help I need. But yeah, I'm going to run again for sure.
Fantastic.
Can't stop, won't stop.
The people of Ontario and Malton, if that's where you're going to run, deserve your representation and would be the better for it.
I thank you so much.
Thanks, Nikki. Have a great night.
All right. Okay. Have a good one. Thanks, Bye. Brian. Bye.
Bye-bye.